Hey, it's Teresa Heiser again. Concerning gun control. When the nation got serious about dealing with drunk driving because too many people were dying, we had PSAs and posters and billboards that read, "Take the keys, arrive alive, and friends don't let friends die drunk." They didn't go after car manufacturers or attempt to make them liable for their misuse. What happened since then to make those branding message geniuses stop making people the best possible deterrent to a possible tragedy by blaming the weapon? Well, one of the reasons they didn't decide to ban cars was because progressives drive cars, and so you can't ban something that they use. You can only ban things that they don't use. They don't use guns, so let's ban the guns. I saw a cartoon I really liked, and it was a 4-panel thing, and it was the same thing. It's one man standing over a body and another man looking at him. And in the first panel, he says, "You beat that man to death? What's the matter with you?" And the second panel is, "You choked that man to death? Strangled that man to death? What's the matter with you?" The third panel is, "You stabbed that man to death? What's the matter with you?" And the fourth panel is, "You shot that man to death? We've got to ban guns." That's it in a nutshell. Honestly, I've never seen it more clearly than that. That's really what it comes down to, right? It's like they just fear. Well, Sigmund Freud, who I'm not a giant fan of, said fear of weapons is sign of an adolescent mind, of an infantile mind, an undeveloped mind, and he's right. So, this whole thing really comes down to I don't know if there's a PSA that's going to protect us from these shooters. I think there's only one thing I can think of that is going to reduce the number of shooters, and that's the only thing I can think of that will reduce the numbers. And it won't stop them because these are fatherless boys, and they're gonna get noticed one way or another. But if you really want to reduce the number of these things, you should make it a policy that the names and the faces of these murderers is never, ever, ever broadcast, ever. A shooter, a murderer, walked into a school and shot 13 people. This guy tried to save him, this hero. These are the names of the victims. And the name of the shooter has been withheld, as has been his picture. And of course, that requires morality and discipline and on the part of the press, and they don't have morality and discipline. The first time a picture comes out, they're going to run with it because they're going to want to be out there in front of it. But if you want to reduce these shootings, which you really want to do, you should make sure that no one gets this publicity because look, when a kid shoots up a school, he's committing suicide. He's going to commit suicide anyway. It's a glorified form of death by cop. But look, I mean, think about how much sense this makes, right? I mean, it's a senseless shooting. It's a senseless tragedy. It's not senseless at all. It makes perfect sense. And this is you're not going to solve the problem until you get down to understanding this. It makes perfect sense what these kids are doing. It makes 100% total, crystal clear sense. They are going to kill themselves. They're so unhappy and so miserable, so filled with hate and rage and self-loathing and all the things they didn't get from their dad, that they're going to kill themselves. Now, if you're going to kill yourself and you feel like you're a loner and a loser and a nothing and a nobody, then why not fix that problem when you kill yourself? Why not go out in a blaze of glory? Why not have everybody who's ignored you your entire life speaking your name? Why not go out famous? You know, if you've never had any friends, if you've never had any impact, if you've never felt like you've even been on this earth, what better way than be to talk of the entire country and probably the world if you can just get the kill count up high enough? It makes perfect sense what they're doing. Perfect sense. And until you understand that, it's not going to go away. That's why I think the only effective answer is, in terms of preventing them, is to make clear that no, you make the same argument against the Muslims, right? When you coat bullets in bacon grease, you can say to them, yeah, you're a psychomaniac. I understand that, because both of them are these mad jihadis and these mass shooters. They're both barking mad nuts. They're genuinely, obviously, needless to say, they're clinically insane because they're murdering people. And the way you can defeat them, or at least suppress the numbers of them, is to say, but you're not going to get your reward for being a homicidal maniac. We're going to shoot bullets at you that have been coated in pig's grease, and your own Quran says that anyone who's been tainted by pork cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. So, yes, you can shoot up some of us, but you're not going to heaven. You're not getting the 72 virgins. You're not getting the pots of honey. You're going to burn in hell for what you did. Not because of what you did, but because we're going to shoot you with pig grease. That works. It worked in 1903 in the Moro Uprising in the Philippines. Once, I think it was Black Jack Pershing said, no, we just shot 200 of them. Throw 200 of them into a big ditch with pigs and bury them together and let 3 of them go home and tell the rest of the guys what they saw. And that was the end of it. It was over. Likewise, you have to say to these, make it clear to these potential shooters, your blaze of glory is not going to result in your immortality or your being admired or your picture being in the paper or anything like that. You're just going to go away. It will have an effect. It will help. It won't stop it. It'll help. The only way you can stop it is, Ben Carson got so much crap over this. When what Ben Carson said was so completely obvious. If somebody said, "Oh, Ben Carson was mugged once and he handed over his wallet," of course he'd hand over your wallet. If somebody's got a gun on you in a back alley and they say, "Give me your wallet," you give them your wallet, right? That's just smart. That's not the same thing. If you go out to after a theater show one night and somebody says, "Give you a wallet," you give them a wallet and hopefully the guy will go away. But if you walk out into an alley one night and somebody says, "Come here," and he puts you up against the wall and there's 15 other people standing against the wall, and one by one he just goes down the line, shoots them in the back of the head, then your options are different, aren't they? And your choices are different and your motivation is different, all the rest of it. Of course you'd rush a guy like that. If a guy's going to blow up a plane or fly it into a building, if I'm looking at a 9mm down the end of that corridor, and that guy is defending the door to the flight deck, and if nobody gets past him, then I'm going to die anyway, obviously. And as we found out from the shooter, sometimes people, but this guy was, Chris Mintz was shot 7 times. He's out of the hospital. Other people were shot once. They're dead. We don't know if this guy can hit anything. You got to run him. And just like I said, just like, ladies, gentlemen, everybody, when I say go, throw everything you got at this guy and keep throwing. And then see if he can hit me when I'm coming down the aisle, when he's getting, stiletto heels in his face. And behind me, presumably, is somebody else who doesn't. Look, you're going to die automatically. You're a dead man in a situation like that. You literally have nothing to lose. And that's the point Carson was making, and he's absolutely right. And that's why the left hates him, because what Carson is talking about requires courage. And they don't have any courage. They would rather just sit there and die. It sounds incredible, doesn't it, to people like us? But it's less effort. And at some level, it's much easier for them. It's much easier for them to stand up against the wall, bow your head, and wait your turn. It's much easier than it is to rush the guy. I'd be screaming at the top of my lungs. I would fly through the air for that last 5 feet, and my teeth would land on his nose. I'd rip his nose off his face, and I'd stab his eyes out with my car keys. He may be shooting me the whole time, and that may end up me being dead, but I was going to be dead anyway. And if I'm on top of this guy dead, then the guy behind us got a chance, right? That's just how we think. That's what's different between us and them. Okay, we got 5 to go. Susan Speakman says, Russia in the Ukraine, Russia in Syria, Russia doing bombing runs in Syria, etc. Is there any chance that President Obama is not completely delusional when he states that leadership equals shouting about global warming, global cooling, global climate change, Gaia worship? And if not, how do we go about having him committed to an asylum? We did a trifecta on this just yesterday, where he was interviewed on 60 Minutes and confronted with the fact that we're being made fools out of and that Putin is challenging his leadership. And you could see, if watch the trifecta if nothing else, because what's fascinating about that is not what Russia's actually doing, which is appalling enough, but you can watch the little wheels going behind Barack Obama's eyes. It's like, wait a minute, hold on. This isn't a question about my favorite color or how awesome is it to be me. This is an actual question. And you can see in his eyes, and what you see in his eyes is fear. And listen to him respond, fear. And fear of a question, fear of a tough question. And basically, this interviewer won't let him go. And he says, they're laughing at you, Mr. Obama. He says, he's challenging your leadership. And he steps forward, Obama steps forward. He says, wait a minute, no, hold on now. If you're saying that ruining your country's economy and going in foreign adventures is leadership, then we got a different definition of leadership. And I leaped out of my chair when I saw that on Trifecta. I said, no, we don't. You've ruined our country, and you've gone on these foreign adventures. You call yourself a leader. But basically, Obama basically went on to say that leadership is getting a climate control treaty. Having the entire Middle East turn into a Russian camp when it used to be an American camp, that's not really relevant to anything, is it? Because he's a weenie. He's a weakling, and he's not very smart. He's at the worst. He has no character. He's never been challenged. I saw this today on the Drudge Report, I think. There is a head of a government, some major diplomat of a major European power like Germany or something. He didn't say which country. But he basically asked one of our diplomats, what are your impeachment procedures? We're quite convinced your president is clinically insane. I'm convinced of it too. This country's fallen an awful long way when an American patriot like me admires the Russian president more than they admire the American president. Vladimir Putin's a murderer. There's no question he's a murderer. He's probably murdered people with his own hands. He's based in Lubyanka, which has killed 850,000 people, if not more. He's a murderer from a murdering society and a society of alcoholics and brutal people. And I'd switch him tomorrow with our president, because Putin loves his country, and Putin stands up for his country, and Putin, he's a man. He's not a good man, but he's a man. In fact, I never really thought about this before, but this is, in fact, the entire dynamic right in front of our eyes. Putin is a bad man. The left thinks that the answer to a bad man is a nothing man, a no man, a non-man, man-child Barack. But it's not working out that way. He's not listening to reason, and he's not, apparently, this has got to be really shocking news for all of you, but apparently Vladimir Putin is not impressed or swayed by that big smile and the assurances that Barack Obama's on the job. He seems to have very little regard for this. And so the answer becomes the only alternative to bad men are good men. The way you stop the Russians with guys like Brezhnev and Gorbachev is with the Americans with a guy like Reagan, another strong man who happens to be a good man. You fight bad men with good men. You don't fight them with no men. It's really pretty simple. And it's a catastrophe, Susan. It gets worse every day. We haven't seen the bottom of it. Obama's going to do an awful lot more in his final year. He's going to kick the daylights out of this anthill before he leaves. It's going to be hard to watch.